Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Can we please all be seated for the next session? Thank you. My name is Beams. I'm one of your room hosts for today. I have a few important housekeeping items to share with you before we start this session. There are 2 emergency exits right to the left. Bathroom is right across the lobby behind the elevator. Please remember to silence your devices. And if you haven't already downloaded our app, there is an app for this summit. Please go to your app store and download. And we want you to use that app to share feedback with us about how we're doing for each of this session. Lastly, this event and all events here will be recorded and will be available after the events to be shared with you all. With that, I will introduce our next session, which is Achieve Compliance with Security by Default and by Design. And I have 3 speakers for that. I have Ignacio Martinez, Andrew Plato, and Jeff Westfall. Please welcome them to the stage.
I'm going to talk first and then last. Am I up already? Hi. All right. Hey, everyone. Okay? Good? We're a little behind, so I'll just get started right away. Welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm Jeff Westfall. I've been working with the federal technical team at Trend Micro now for the past several years. I've been working with a lot of organizations and agencies to help them achieve FedRAMP compliance, helping them with their overall We're going to focus on security and compliance with this talk. So we have a very, very exciting story that we're going to share today. We have Ignacio Martinez here from Smartsheet. He's going to walk us through their journey to achieve FedRAMP compliance. With the help of Andrew Plato here from Anitian and also Trend Micro. That's it. So our goal here is really to just help you understand or better understand the power of cloud automation, right? So we want you to understand how to leverage cloud-native controls to help you accelerate your specific compliance requirements. Better? No, sir. Way better? No, sir. All right, pause. So cool. Keep going. Oh, that's way better. Yeah. Should I start over? Oh my gosh. Oh man, I was all prepared. All right, hold on. Let me start over here again. All right. So I'm Jeff Westfall. Did everybody get that part? All right. So I'm Jeff Westfall. I've been working with Trend Micro and the technical team the last couple of years. And with that, I've been working with several organizations and agencies and helping them with their compliance requirements and helping them with their cloud migrations. So again, we have a very exciting story to tell. We're focusing on security and compliance. We have Ignacio Martinez here from Smartsheet. He's going to walk us through their journey to achieve FedRAMP compliance with the help of Andrew Plato from Anitian and Trend Micro. So again, our goal is to focus and help you better understand the power of cloud automation here. How to leverage cloud-native controls to accelerate your compliance requirements, with Trend Micro being part of the security of that design. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ignacio, and he's going to get us started and help us better understand that journey and that story.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Hello, everybody. So I'm Ignacio Martinez, VP of Security Risk and Compliance. And because of that title, I got the dubious task of leading our joyful journey through FedRAMP authorization. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on who we are, what our offering is, to give you the context of what we were trying to take through that authorization. So Smartsheet, we are a SaaS, and we've been in the commercial world for a number of years, very popular with enterprise and large companies, but we say we empower everyone to improve how they work. So it's part of the emerging space of a collaborative work platform where multiple people can be in working on workflows simultaneously, sharing data among themselves, publishing, creating dashboards, and rolling up visibility into that work at various levels within the organization. So when we say we empower everyone to improve how they work, we talk about working differently. And there's 4 major components that we like to talk about. Number one is we make collaboration work. So everyone's seen some of the productivity software where multiple people can be in looking at a document simultaneously editing and seeing it. We brought that principle to this platform that we call Smartsheet, so that you can have users in an organization looking not just at a document, but looking at work and looking at a workspace together. The goal was to empower these teams to be faster and, and some accountability, because you can see who's in there working with you. Ultimately, we wanted to make decisions faster for our customers. So when you've got this work across the organization among teams and in different areas, being able to see progress on that work and results of that work and roll that up to dashboards or some kind of visibility at various levels of the organization, we felt that had to be part of our platform. We also wanted to create automation, because if you're going to go through and figure out how to get something done once, likely you're going to have to do it a second time and a third. So figure out how to make this tool automate that process so that it can be repeated by one or by many people, or it can be repeated across numbers of areas of the organization. So we built in automation with reminders and workflows and approvals. And then last, we knew that if we wanted to play in the enterprise world where people needed to get this work done, we had to build Smartsheet with security and make sure that we met all the requirements of the enterprise customer, our target audience. And really what we say is, when you deploy Smartsheet, it helps you get from idea to impact fast. So for work execution, the platform gives you, a really powerful work platform that what the customers find is they can deploy across a whole lot of use cases. We were discovered early on, especially in the IT world, for IT projects and project management. But then we get discovered by other areas of organizations, and we're now used in operational processes, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing. But people are endless in terms of the creativity in the use cases. Even the ones that aren't so sexy, like GDPR, we found that it worked for us. Customers are finding it, as well as third parties, to accelerate your GDPR compliance, automating it with a product like ours. So the use cases are endless. One of the things that happened to us was our platform, which was not FedRAMP authorized, got discovered by government agencies. They purchased on a credit card, it started spreading, and ultimately the CISOs or CIOs would discover it, look into it and say, whoa, this is not FedRAMP authorized. It's a cloud product, it's not meeting those requirements. We need to look at limiting its further spread and the types of data we can put on it, because it lacked FedRAMP authorization. So we began getting requests to take Smartsheet through FedRAMP authorization. And a little over a year ago, we decided that it was time. There was enough demand, and I was relatively new at the organization, and our CEO said, well, FedRAMP, that's a security and a compliance thing, isn't it? And I said, yes. I said, well, it sounds like something you can take us through. How quickly can you get us through that? Which was a typical question. And I said, well, let's talk about that. And he's like, well, we can just get our current commercial platform authorized. We were running in co-location data centers, so the quick answer to that was no. We were looking at a new instantiation of Smartsheet, had to make a decision about how to do that, how to get that through FedRAMP authorization. So we made a call to one of our partners, AWS, and they said, yes, we can definitely help you along those lines. So we chose to partner with them to do it on AWS GovCloud. We also told them that because our CEO and the executive team wants us to get this to the market fast, that we were going to select the route which some consider the most onerous and the longest, and that is FedRAMP authorization with JAB monitoring. So being assessed by the JAB, going for JAB monitoring was our choice, and the sooner the better. So when we did that, one of the things AWS said is, we've got some partnerships and we can help you take you through this FedRAMP compliance journey and get to authorization faster, because we've got partners that can deploy tools to help you get that status of authorization quickly with out-of-the-box pre-configured suite of tools that you can deploy in your new FedRAMP environment that we were deploying on GovCloud that are pre-configured to help get you to that authorization state faster. For us, that was absolutely key, because we went with AWS GovCloud. We had a solid platform, we still do, that has defense in-depth concepts and security built in, but we had to stand that up. And at the same time, we had to stand up all of those security tools and security routines to be able to meet the compliance requirements for not only the initial assessment by the auditors of the FedRAMP environment for security compliance, but the ongoing monthly submissions of your continuous monitoring reports, the scans, the outputs, the results of the remediations. So that's where we were introduced by AWS to Anitian and Andrew and his team in terms of what we were going to do. And we quickly got them into the hot seat with us, and we said, we're doing this. And then Andrew kind of laughed when we told him what the timeline was. But once we kind of chuckled and said, yeah, we can do this. So it was a partnership between AWS, the partners they brought to bear, and my team internally to get this build done in the journey. We applied for FedRAMP Connect program mid-July of 2018. We were notified, I just shared this with the team, July 30th of 2018, that we were accepted into the FedRAMP Connect. That was a starting gun, that was the beginning of the race of the build, all aspects, all partners working together to get us to first FedRAMP ready with that assessment, ultimately the submission of our complete package, all on that FedRAMP Connect timeline. So the little interruption we had in there was our package was due mid-December, and we had done the readiness assessment and passed earlier, submitted our package, and then we had the government shutdown. So then we were kind of in limbo. Our package was in. We had to start actually creating and producing our continuous monitoring packages, even though no one was picking up the phone or giving us instructions on how or when to submit those. But we had the tools and everything deployed by the team so that our team was able to produce those. Once the government opened back up and started looking at everything that had piled up, we were quickly accepted into JAB review, began that, had our kickoff, and we achieved FedRAMP in process in April of 2019, which if you look at that timeline is aggressive and is much shorter than what you typically see for FedRAMP as a whole, much less the JAB authorization. And I will say that the team in producing those monthly submissions, even when we weren't technically submitting them, they were done on time, the tools that the teams brought to bear quickly got us so that every submission from January being our first one through now have been categorized as successful, which again, we were told, that that's not often the case, but I think it's a proven instance of where this suite, designed for compliance to meet the FedRAMP standards, can get you there in quick order if you use it as designed and deployed. Like I said, one of the key partners, we'll call it out, we chose AWS GovCloud. And one of the reasons we did that was GovCloud is FedRAMP authorized at high. We went out at moderate. We kind of wanted to have the ability and the optionality to be able to take Smartsheet Gov to high, which once we achieve that, we're already getting a lot of requests and pushback. We're going to be evaluating that pretty quickly. But the fact that we're on US GovCloud gives us that ability. We designed it to get this foray for Smartsheet into the federal world with the biggest swath possible, and that was the second reason we went out at moderate. The goal was to partner with someone like AWS and the partners they can bring to bear so we could get there quickly, be in the marketplace, and begin selling. We're also available via the Amazon Marketplace, or soon will be, and I'm proud to say that aside from announcing yesterday that Smartsheet Gov is now available for sale and generally available, that we also achieved Amazon Partner Network Advanced tier. So that's really a little bit about Smartsheet, who we were, the complexity of the SaaS we took through this process. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, who's going to talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty and nuts and bolts of how we did it.
All right. Thank you, Ignacio. All right. Let me grab water here. There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk about how you can achieve compliance quickly, very quickly, quicker than it's ever been done before. I'm going to talk about our compliance automation platform and how it helps Smartsheet and other clients, other customers of ours, race through the compliance process. Let's take a second and talk about something that Ignacio kind of hinted on, this journey through FedRAMP. So many of you may have seen these diagrams that are on the FedRAMP website. This outlines the process of going through FedRAMP authorization. So there's two different processes. You can be, of course, sponsored by an agency. Excuse me, it's sponsored by an agency, or you can do it the difficult way, which of course Ignacio chose, which is to go through the JAB process. These are great slides, and this process in and of itself can take a year, 9 months. It's a, you know, you have to get assessments, but there's a pretty large missing component, which is, oh yeah, you have to actually like build a compliant environment, and that takes a long time, a really long time. That in and of itself can take 12 to 18 months. Our experience, I know customers that are in their 3rd year of still building their FedRAMP compliant environments. It's complicated, to say the least. With compliance automation, we can absolutely collapse that process. We can do this at speeds, like I said, that are, quite frankly, ludicrous. But let's step back one more second. And what is wrong with compliance? Why does it take so darn long? Well, I've been doing compliance for a long time. And first thing I can tell you is that no matter whether it's FedRAMP or PCI or CGIS or ISO or, you know, pick your letters, they're all massively complicated. They're arcane, they're confusing, there's lots of rules. And your internal teams, unless you're a compliance expert, this is guesswork. You're hoping you kind of get it correctly. The classic approach to this was you'd go out and hire professional services teams, which they'd come in and, of course, try to bill as many hours as they possibly could. And of course, they're just going to lengthen the process as well. And they end up building these kind of one-off Frankenstein type environments, which then you, of course, have to care and feed. Long and short of it is, this is an extremely complicated process. And if you look at all the controls you have to configure, for FedRAMP moderate, there's 300 and some. For high, it's like 400 and some. This is a lot of configurations. This is difficult for any team of people to do, let alone if this is your first time through it. But you know, complexity is only really half the battle when it comes to compliance. The other one is, it sucks. Nobody likes compliance. It's miserable, okay? It's an unrewarding, frustrating, and distracting endeavor for any development teams. And if you talk to developers and say the word compliance, I mean, they just start groaning. Because it is just that. It's difficult to get the talent, difficult to get the expertise, and it slows the whole process down, which therefore becomes an impediment to your time to market or time to money in this case. So that's where we came to compliance automation. And a few years ago, Tim and the AWS team approached us, and they had been talking about this for years. They had been going on about how we got to automate compliance, we got to make this a continuum, we got to do this. And for us as a compliance company, we're like, yeah, we want to do this too. This is something that is on our radar as much as it is yours. So we went into this with a kind of a shared vision between what AWS wanted to do and what we as an organization wanted to accomplish as well, which is to build a compliance automation platform. That is a product that can deploy a compliance architecture very quickly in the cloud. These are some of the key components of that infrastructure. First, it has to be automated. And when I mean automated, I mean completely automated. I don't mean a couple of scripts that stand up at EC2 instances. I'm talking about setting up the entire environment in a completely automated way. That is, configuring everything, pushing controls, setting up monitoring. Everything is automated. It also has to become turnkey. That is, it's got to include everything. Again, when you talk to the classic way of doing compliance, you're having to go around and procure, you know, a firewall and endpoint security. Well, you got 29 different vendors you got to go negotiate with, and every one of them, of course, has an opinion on how they want to sell you something. So we came to this saying, no, we want a platform that's got all those components, they're baked into it, they're licensed, they're configured, as well as all of the policy templates you need. There's documentation. The SSP, the standards, you know, the system security plan for FedRAMP, it's like 400 pages long, which I don't know about you, but a lot of us are probably not excited to read a 400-page document on compliance. So we're going to provide those as templates. It also has to then be a proven platform. That is something that we know will work. that has known good reference architectures, guardrails, and audit our artifacts, which gets us to that next one, guardrails. It's not enough to build these environments and just let them go. You got to monitor them. You got to keep an eye on them. And this concept of guardrails was something that AWS contributed. The idea of having automated controls within the environment that keeps the environment compliant. So that when somebody goes in there and goes, oh, hey, I think I'll make all the S3 buckets public, the environment knows, hey, that's not cool, and it automatically reverts it back to not being public. It has to be isolated, which is no commingling of data. Commingling is a massive problem in compliance, because if you have your data hosted with a third party and they're not FedRAMP compliant, then you're not FedRAMP compliant. You have to have everything in an isolated space so that it can move, it can size, and it doesn't become reliant on somebody else's environment. And then, of course, it had to be flexible and scalable, work with the cloud, and provide a repeatable platform. Well, this is what we've come up with, and this is our platform, Compliance Automation. It is a comprehensive compliance infrastructure. Everything is there. All the tech you need, endpoint, SIM, perimeter, vulnerability management, WAF. We've actually added container security as well as secrets management. Those are two new components we just added. All the documentation templates you need, sample procedures, policies, and an artifact repository. So a centralized place to store all the audit artifacts that you need. But then also the next big piece is this DevOps stack. It's not enough to just give this environment over to somebody. You have to then help the organization onboard their apps. And that was a big issue we dealt with Ignacio and his team. They knew their app really well, and they knew they had to bring it into the environment. But they needed that help to get the instances up and running and use hardened images and such and so forth. So we had a whole library of automation code that we could then provide as part of this to help them automate their own platform. And then the last piece is our addition to this all, which is, as you heard, you have to keep this environment monitored 24/7. If you go through the JAB process, it's a requirement. Each month you've got to submit those reports. So we paired this with a 24/7 managed security practice that will do threat monitoring, compliance checking, will do all that ongoing monitoring or continuous monitoring and management of the environment. This is another way to look at that architecture, and if this looks familiar, it was in Tim's presentation yesterday. This is another way so this is the core architecture that we built. It's based on a reference architecture that AWS provided themselves. Another way to think about what we do is a shared model. So we've all seen the shared responsibility model that AWS has, right? They provide the sort of base layer. What we're essentially providing is another layer on top of that, a layer between the application and the data, in this case, Smartsheet and their platform and their product, and then the underlying AWS infrastructure. We are, in essence, then, a security and compliance infrastructure. If your app runs in our environment, it's compliant. All the controls and everything are already there. Okay, sounds fascinating, right? How do you actually do that? Now I'm going to walk you through how we actually build this platform. And it starts with, as I've mentioned already, those reference architectures. Fortunately, AWS actually provides these. You can get these right now. They've got documents that define all these reference architectures. Oddly enough, this is actually the easy thing to do as part of our platform. But you got to build out all that. So it's VPCs, it's subnets, routes, NAT gateways, access controls. You got to do application load balancers, which of course with FedRAMP they have to be FIPS 140 compliant. Accessing, you've got a whole set of AWS services that have to be stood up and instantiated and configured. And again, I want to emphasize, this is all happening automatically. There's no human intervention. There's no person sitting there going click, 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 click. That doesn't happen at all. This entire process is a fully automated process. Next, you need to use images. You're going to be running EC2 instances, Windows, Linux. Fortunately, our friends at Center for Internet Security publish a whole suite of pre-hardened images for FedRAMP, PCI, take your pick. What's great about these is that they get you about 80 to 90% of the way there. All you have to do is instantiate these things, do a little bit of post-runtime configuration and tweaking, and then you're there. So these are a fast way to get the instances you need up and running with the correct security controls and configurations on them. After you've got some images that you can run everything on, the next step is to start deploying some of the integral components. And that gets us to what I think is really the sweet spot of our whole platform, which is our authentication stack. Authentication is the big challenge for these platforms because you've got all these applications running. You've got tons of service accounts. You've got passwords that need to be rotated. You need certificates that need to be generated. You have policies that need to be pushed to all these things. All of that has to be done in a central identity repository somewhere. So we do a fully hardened Active Directory cluster with a certificate authority. And again, I want to emphasize, this is all completely automated. There is no human intervention. This is all done through automated procedures. So this platform stands up the Active Directories, populates them with all the data, creates all the certificates, and pushes them to all of the requisite components within the infrastructure. We also would then integrate multi-factor authentication into that identity repository. The great thing about this is that it's completely isolated from anything else. It's a completely isolated identity repository. It is not dependent upon any other external repository outside of the environment, which gives us flexibility and the ability to size that up and move it around. Once we've got that in place, then we got to start with the sort of the components to manage the environment. So we use a code repository because, of course, there's a whole library of infrastructure as code here. We got to have some place to put it. So we put it in, we set up an instance of GitHub, again, automated, fully configured, and we put all the code in there. Then we need to manage all the configuration of that entire environment plus the application environment. We use Puppet Enterprise for that. Again, same thing. We deploy it, configure it, do everything there. We also can do some guardrailing with Puppet, which is cool. We can actually manage and monitor the configuration. That then finally gets us to our security product, which is Trend Micro. And I got to take a moment here, and I got to thank Trend Micro because, number one, they make an outstanding product. And I'm not just saying that because the guy's standing next to me. I actually mean that. They've been in the cloud for a really long time. In fact, they were one of the first security companies out there to make a cloud-enabled product. They've had products in the AWS marketplace for years. So when it comes to running in the AWS cloud as a security technology, I mean, they really are ahead of pretty much everybody else. They also have a broad platform support. So their product runs on just about every flavor of Linux, Windows that you can think of. That is also good for us because we need to be able to cover all those systems with AV and IPS and all that. But the other cool thing they do is they do all of that stuff. It's really difficult to find a security technology these days that can actually do all of those capabilities, like file integrity monitoring. I don't know why file integrity monitoring is so tough for products to do, since it's such a simple thing, but anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent. Okay, so we set up the console, we populate it with all the policies, we push the agents out to all the endpoints in the environment, and those policies are all preset to meet the FedRAMP requirements, meaning scans and all that, and all the logging is, again, configured automatically. The next piece we have to do is we have to build out our SIM. There it is. SIM is a really critical core component of any security and compliance infrastructure. You got to log everything in the environment. SIMs are also notoriously extremely difficult to set up and get working. Well, guess what? We've automated that completely. Now, for our FedRAMP stack, we use an Elastic-based SIM, which is Elastic is kind of becoming the SIM of choice among DevOps teams. But we also support Splunk as an alternative SIM choice in that. So again, we deploy the console, the indexers, the processors. We set up all of the host logging, all of the cloud logging from like CloudTrail and CloudWatch and et cetera. All the alerts, all the reports that are necessary, all the storage, all the certificate trusts, basically everything goes into that SIM. We also use the SIM for things like threat hunting and for the guardrail reporting that comes out of the environment. And then we can also configure each of the applications to report into the SIM as well. With the SIM up and running, we move on to vulnerability management. We have to get a vuln scanner up. So again, we deploy that, configure the scans, set those up, report all that data back to the SIM. As you can see, we use Saint for that. Perimeter defenses come next. We need a WAF set up to do inbound web application filtering. So we automatically set that up, push certificates to it, etc. And then if you have a lot of outbound traffic, now we don't use this in all environments, but for environments where you have a lot of traffic going out of the environment to multiple different places, we will set up what's known as a transit VPC. Again, automated. This is all done as part of infrastructure as code, no human beings doing this. We set up the transit VPC, deploy a next-gen firewall into that, and then run all the outbound traffic through the next-gen firewall to do things like outbound IDS, IPS, web filtering, application control, etc. Next, we get to guardrails. Now, I've mentioned this a couple of times, and guardrails are really important to making this entire thing work. Part of the vision from the very beginning was an environment that maintains its compliant state. Now, here's the thing about guardrails. There is no one guardrail technology out there. I know a lot of GRC tools will tell you they're guardrail products. They're not, okay? They're really just work-making systems. Guardrailing is a much more active thing that has to be done within the environment. It has to monitor not only what's going on inside the environment, but the interactions between multiple technologies. There's lots of different ways you can do this. You can do it through AWS config rules. You can do it through Lambda functions, similarts. Actually, Trend Micro and Puppet do a fair amount of guardrailing. And yes, GRC tools can help in this, but usually they're only going to look at a very superficial layer. So we have all of these running in the environment, and these are going to do one of two things. They're either going to respond in real time to revert the environment back to a compliant state, or they're going to send an alert up to the SOC, and then somebody can react to that and then reconfigure the environment to do what they need to do. This greatly assists in the audit process, because when the auditors come in, we can show them these guardrails, they're running the artifacts that come out of them, and prove that this environment is in a compliant state. Next, we have to then, of course, get the engagement, get the application to run. So once the environment is all up and running, we now need to actually get the application into this environment. That's where we get into what we call the post-deployment engagement, which is working with our client to help them onboard their application, set up the hardened images, integrate the security automations, handle exceptions, and basically steward them through the audit process. This is actually what our swim lanes, as we like to say, look like. So the first one is where we're building out the architecture. The next two is where we're helping build out the application for the environment, doing all the documentation required, which incidentally is still one of the most time-consuming aspects of compliance. And then lastly, handing it off to our Security Operations Center to monitor that on a 24/7 basis, which gets us to the last piece of this. Once everything is up and running and the app is there and the auditors have audited, then it transitions into this continuous monitoring phase. This is where we're going to run the vuln scans, produce the monthly POAM reports. If you heard of that, it stands for Plan of Action and Milestones required by FedRAMP. But complete that continuous monitoring process. We have a whole SOC, USA-based SOC that monitors these environments, can respond to incidents, can do threat hunting, on-demand reporting and other things to basically ensure that that environment now is completely turnkey, that it maintains that compliant state. So you heard Ignacio talk a little bit about the timeline for this. So here's some actual dates for that. So we actually got engaged in about the middle of September. As you heard, they got their FedRAMP ready state at the very end of July. I don't know what happened in August, but we got involved in September. And we started talking in mid-September, and then we actually kicked off the build on the very end of September. Now, if you'll notice, those are times. It took our entire deployment 3 hours to deploy. And believe it or not, we now got that down to 2 hours. So in 2 hours, we can build an entire compliance infrastructure. Once that's built, then we're on to the doc and application onboarding phase. So then we're working with teams to help get those applications on board. And as you can see, that happened through October. The 3PAO came in November, late November, right after Thanksgiving. Completed their audit, package was ready by December, and then of course the government shut down. But then it went forward from that point. So this was, as far as any of us know, the world's fastest FedRAMP compliance effort ever. And it was really because a lot of us all came together to build this. It wasn't just us per se, but it was Ignacio and his team, it was the AWS team and what they contributed to this, it was the 3PAO who contributed to this as well. So there were a lot of different people involved in the Smartsheet project. But at the end of the day, it was the platform that really got us going through this a lot faster and got everything deployed very quickly. Okay, so I have a couple of just last thoughts, and then I'm going to turn it back to Jeff in the Trend Micro. What you just saw today, or what I just described, is the future of security and compliance. This is how things are going to be done in the future. You aren't going to sit at consoles clicking away at things and spending months and months dinking around with SIMs. That's the old way, and it doesn't work. How do I know it doesn't work? Every single breach is an example of why us humans getting in the middle of this is a big problem. We are the problem because we make mistakes, because we're slow, because we're fallible, and that's just the way it is. Code and automation, infrastructure as code, gives us a discipline and a consistency that has simply not been possible until now. With that, we can produce these environments and reproduce them at a moment's notice. We can set up new compliance infrastructures, one right after the other, and they can be as big and as small and as wide and as far and as big as you need to be. The old way of these intricate processes and project plans and big professional services engagements, that's done, that's gone. That's not the way to do it anymore. Compliance automation can speed you through this process, can get you there so that you can get back to what you need to be doing, which is building those apps, serving your customers, fulfilling whatever your organizational purpose is, and not having to spend all your time dinking around with the SIM and whether the stupid certificate is installed in the right directory, because the automation can do all that for you. So, with that, I'm going to give it back to Trend Micro, and thank you very much, and take it away.
I'll take that. Yep. How was that? Am I good this time? It sounds like it.
Good.
Okay, great. So quick background on Trend Micro. Right, we've been around for 30 years. We're a 30-year-old company, but our focus for these past 30 years has been on one thing, and that's security. So we're a leader in several of the market and technical reports that I'm sure you're all very familiar with. We're also a global leader in the threat research community. We discovered over 1,400 vulnerabilities last year alone. And as Andrew alluded to, our deep security solution has been really on its own journey as well. So since 2008, we were protecting your physical servers. But as your data centers and your applications evolve, your compliance requirements change, the security solution should evolve as well. So we were the first to protect VMware at the hypervisor layer, and now you're starting to hear more about our partnership with AWS, some of our integrations with some cloud-native security controls through AWS. And now the conversation is continuing to change. We're starting to hear more about containers. We're hearing more about CI/CD pipelines, serverless-based architectures. But through this whole process, the security solution is evolving as well. So we're focusing on one solution through all aspects of this environment. So I mentioned our partnership with AWS. We are one of their top security partners. We're a launch partner with several of those AWS native security controls that I talked about earlier. We are in the marketplace. We are in GovCloud. We have a SaaS-based and a software-based solution, perpetual and consumption-based pricing. And I'm very proud to announce, if anybody missed the keynote this morning, we are a launch partner on the new ATO on AWS initiative as well. So in summary, one solution for your hybrid cloud security stack, running 7 different security controls at pre-deployment and at runtime. So one security solution that's API-driven, running in your orchestration software, protecting a wide variety of platforms on virtually all aspects of your infrastructure to secure your compliance requirements. And that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. We will have some time for questions, but we'll probably be hanging out in the back here if you guys want to come by and ask away. We also have a happy hour. I'm hoping
that's right. Yeah,
am I okay to announce that, or was that a secret?
Yeah, it was fine with me. We got a reception going on at, what's the name of the place? Bar something?
At a bar.
Bar Deco.
Bar Deco. So see, if we don't see you in the back for questions, feel free to swing by Bar Deco, and we'll be happy to have some questions with a beer with you too.
Eat and drink and be merry.
Thanks, everybody.